Hey, Sox fans! Welcome back to Good Guys Talk Back, a fan-centric Chicago White Sox podcast. Hey, I'm Nick Murawski. This is episode 264, doing this live on Sunday nights on the Good Guys Talk Back YouTube channel. If you ever have an opportunity, jump in, join us in the comments. And a happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you. Especially those tuning in live, of course. Got a lot to get to by our Chicago White Sox, 8-15-2, if I'm doing that correctly. But here to chop everything up with me, my dear friend, diehard Sox fan, Pat Hester. Hello, sir.
Buddy, welcome back from Arizona. I cannot wait to dive into your trip, all that you took in terms of stretching routines, and was everybody doing it correctly? Were you able to get a credential and get down and talk to Pedro to get quotes yourself? Did you have a one-on-one sit down? Did you have dinner or lunch with him? I'd love to hear if you were able to get that accomplished. And obviously some big news since we last spoke, with Dylan Cease being traded to the San Diego Padres. Interesting reaction, I think, from my standpoint, what I heard, but some good news. And Nick, before you know it, we're going to be talking about opening day.
Yeah, we're less than 2 weeks away from opening day.
Well, Nick, if you're still there, you are frozen, my friend. So let's pick it up where Nick, I think, maybe dropped off. Maybe he's still there. Nick, are you there? Are you back?
I think I'm back. Yeah.
You think you're back? Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was concerned about you.
Yeah, that's okay. Spotty internet maybe on a holiday. I don't know. So if you care about this, and again, these are just facts. Sox at their 8-15-2 mark, tied for last place in the Cactus League, and the third worst in all of baseball with a -23 run diff. Again, that's just putting it out there. That's where they're at right now as we record here on Sunday, March 17th. Now, also, Minnesota projected to be at the top, near the top of the AL Central this coming season. They're having a horrible spring. I mean, one of the worst records in all of baseball in the spring, and a -29 run diff. So, again, these are just numbers. This is just information, just putting it out there. So maybe you care, maybe you don't.
They're just sitting back going, "We told you, it's the Central. Anything can happen."
Anything can happen. So there you go. We are done watching the Chicago White Sox, at least from NBC Sports Chicago. They had a couple of games this past weekend, and we're done watching all of that. So you'll just have to be following different folks on social media and whatever videos put out there, or if you've got a buddy that happened to be in Arizona, that's what we're going to get right now. But just a small handful of games left, really, Pat. March 28th, opening day. We could talk my time in Arizona. No one really needs to hear about all that. No one's itching to hear that. It's more the Dylan Cease thing, of course, is the biggest thing that dropped, and everybody and their brother jumping on when that happened. I think on Wednesday, doing live shows, reactions, all this stuff about really the return of guys that, frankly, nobody's probably ever heard of before in their lives, or have got, just a little bit of an understanding on. But there were big reactions to it. And I've got some thoughts, as I know you do. So it was rumored for a while, and everybody, I think, was breathing a sigh of relief when Justin Fields finally got traded. And now we can move on to different conversations in Bears world, where when this happened and Cease was traded, Pat, I felt like finally, okay, we can move on now. This is finally over. I had a feeling it was going to happen. I can't believe it kind of went on as long as it did, but understandable under the circumstances and everything. So Cease traded to the San Diego Padres. Everybody knows about that. And you pretty much, you probably know about the return. And then we'll get into our reactions. Sox received 3 of the top players in the Padres farm system. Right-handers Drew Thorpe and Jairo Iriarte. I'm trying to get that pronunciation of the last name as best as possible. I've been working on that.
Have you been just workshopping that? That's good.
On a flight home. Padres number 5 and number 8 prospects, respectively, and A-ball outfielder Samuel Zavala ranked 7th. Going along with that package, Steven Wilson, who appeared in 52 games in relief for the Padres last season. Wilson actually pitched for the Sox this past weekend, and Thorpe is supposed to pitch on Monday, the 18th. So, Pat, reactions, feelings, thoughts. This finally happened this past Wednesday. Cease gone to San Diego.
Nick, it really didn't, it wasn't like a shock. It wasn't like, oh, my doors are blown off here. I can't believe this happened, because we've been talking about it, quite frankly, for months on end, seemingly. And I think you and I had come to the conclusion that maybe this wouldn't happen now. Maybe it would just happen at the trade deadline. So it seemed like talks had quieted, but as soon as the Yankees got involved and there was some conversation there with some situations on their starting staff, I think that's where it kind of built back up again. So that momentum started to carry as other people had needs, and to block that from the Yankees, the Padres stepped up. And I heard the Rangers were in, but they couldn't put as good of a package together as the Padres could. So I was happy to kind of put it behind us. I wasn't really thrilled when you look at it and go, we don't have a guy that I rely on starting right now at all, but that is what it is. The season is going to be what it is. We are very lacking in the starting pitching department. So the Cease doesn't change that much. What does that swing your season? Maybe 5 wins one way or the other. Who really knows? And then there was some conversation about, well, did the Sox get enough? Maybe they should have waited and tried to get more. When you talk about, what they got from the Padres, 3 guys in their top, really in their top 8 in terms of their system, but only 1 guy in the top 100 in all of MLB prospects. So could you have gotten more? I don't know. When you think back on it, Nick, you and I and a lot of Sox fans will think of Dylan Cease in a very glowing manner, but we know that it wasn't always great. When he came in, it was a work in progress with him. And, he's had some outstanding moments, and he had the outstanding year. But outside of that, it's been a little bit erratic. So I would say I applaud Chris Getz for getting what he got. And who knows, really, we won't really know what the return on this investment is until probably 2 or 3 years. Right. And only, and let's just be honest, law of averages says that maybe one of these guys will start in your team someday. There's no guarantee that, anybody's going to be that good. So it is what it is. It's kind of my reaction to it, Nick. I'm kind of glad it's behind us. It kind of sucks that, again, the staff is what it is, but that's where we're at with this whole situation.
Yeah, I don't think Dylan Cease had that slider, when he came to the White Sox. That was developed. One hell of a 2022 season last year. Tough to follow up on a runner-up Cy Young performance, bullseye on your back. Just things weren't clicking for him. Sure, he had his normal glimpses of domination, but it just wasn't what we saw in 2022. In these types of situations, I of course, you have the Garrett Cole, potential injury that amped up the Yankees, which you and I talked about this a while ago. It's like, it might take an injury. It might take something weird that happens in spring training for a team that believes that they're in contention this season to say, you know what, I can't leave things to chance that we're going to be able to get this guy at the deadline when there's other teams that are looking around the room saying, whoa, we're kind of in it at the trade deadline. We're going to we're going to go after him. So, Padres who've got a wild owner, which I love, getting crazy, getting wild. And you're almost you're kind of gambling on the future, right? That's what a lot of this is all about, is like, well, what can Cease give you, in the years coming? We know what kind of body work we have. We know the potential, and that's what it's all about. This is what Chris Getz had to say. We felt it was the right time to make this trade. We had a threshold that we felt needed to be met. Up until Wednesday, we didn't feel like we had a deal on the table that met the mark. It finally came together, and we moved on it to inject this type of talent into the organization. I woke up excited today. Now, Chris Getz.
Easy there, Chris.
Yeah, I know. He's all kinds of excited. Chris Getz has been around, man. Director of player development back in 2016 when we had our most recent rebuild. Okay. And now he gets shot up to GM, a job that in my mind, he should not have. He's not qualified for, but he has, for all different kinds of reasons that, we as Sox fans know. And he's excited about this. Maybe Chris Getz, in this role as GM, does a better job with player development from that 30,000 feet above air kind of view. Maybe as director, it just, he couldn't handle it. Drinking from a fire hose with all the prospects that we had. You think back to that. Too much. I can't develop all this.
Sarcasm tonight is as thick as the monk's mustache, Nick. I mean, my goodness.
And now he's able to kind of coast up above and kind of just delegate, maybe. And maybe that's his role. Maybe he does a better job in this. Our dear friend of the podcast, Pat, Steve Paradzinski, wonderful work with Sox on Tap. He put this out in social media. This was his post, and I agree with this 1,000%. He said, if Rebuild 2.0 taught me one thing, it's don't be excited about prospects that are acquired in trades. Don't overthink the return and hope for the best. Hey, in the theme that I go about doing things, I'm not going to tell you how to fan at all. You want to be excited about prospects? That's great. Have something to be excited about this coming season. If it's the new stadium potentially, if it's the prospects, if it's just the young guys that we've got vying for rotation spots and beyond, do it, man. Be excited if that's what it's, all about. I understand it. But I think to what Steve was saying, and I actually got to, run into him in Arizona, which was wonderful to talk with him and a little bit about the C stuff and Kopech moving to the bullpen, which we'll get to. I've been through this, as so many Sox fans have. I remember foaming at the mouth, just could not get enough a video of, Kopech or Cease or, whomever, from 2017, 2018. I can't get all excited about it all over again. I'll wait till you're wearing a White Sox uniform. Sure, I'll check in, and you want positive progress, right? But I'm not hanging here just saying, oh, well, look at this. Maybe it works out. It didn't really last time, but maybe it does this time. I'll wait. I'll wait till I see you at 35th and Shields.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. I do have to say, I'm thinking about Steve today because, number one, it's his all-time favorite holiday today, St. Patrick's Day. For anybody that follows it on social media, he rages against this day for whatever reason. And Illinois won today, the Big Ten championship. He's a big Purdue supporter and not a big fan of the Illinois, as he likes to post. So he must be having a rough day today. Did you do a wellness check on Steve?
Well, he just had a birthday too, so I think he's still
what a birthday present.
So right. But he is a great follow, and we had a wonderful conversation. But I go along with his thinking on it. It's just that's just how I am as a fan right now.
But I think at some point, Nick, it's easy to say that now, but come June, July, when this season has already slid away. It's already gone.
Yeah.
I think I'll be right back into YouTube highlight watching season. Like, oh, I got to see this guy.
Well,
now.
that's all we're going to have.
Yeah,
So we have to do that, right? Like
there's
you're going to have Thorpe go on Monday and you might see some of these guys sooner rather than later that we got back from C's and there's others that we got at the trade deadline last year that we're going to be seeing very soon that might have a real impact on 2024. So you're kind of forced to do it. You got to tune in, but I'm not as like I guess I don't know. I was so enchanted by the prospects. I was really in a cloud about it, and I think I drank the Kool-Aid hard.
Yeah.
Whatever was sold to me on what this team could look like, what the arms could look like, what a rotation could look like, starting with who we thought was going to be the anchor, Michael Kopech, and boy, how that has gone in a completely different direction. I can't do that all over again. And I know others can, but I just can't.
The last time it happened, because it was so different from the norm. It was so unsocked what they did that you were willing to embrace it, and you're like, I'll check it out, because I was like, I'm watching Nick Madrigal going, I can't wait to see this guy on the South Side playing second base for years and years to come. Look at this guy with the bat and always never strikes out guy, and he's always on base, and the energy and the little spark plug type of guy. And then he's he's moving along in the system right up with Robert, right? It was like Robert would move up, here comes Madrigal, boop, ba-doop, ba-doop. They're going right with each other. So you look back and you go, wow, that process was painful, but I was willing to endure it then. I think it's harder for us now because the last process didn't bear any fruit. If the last process had done anything for us, if it was a back-to-back, Central Division championship, and at least a round or two of playoff victories, right? You're moving along, then you can go, all right, we just didn't. We stopped short, right? We stopped short. We didn't put all our chips in. We didn't fill in the holes when we needed to, when we needed to spend money. But if we had done that, man, we could have had something there, and you kind of can blame it all on ownership, which we love to do, and rightfully so here. It's hard to do it this time because, is it going to be 3 to 5 years before we're going to see any kind of progress? 3 to 5 years, Nick, let's just do the math. We're going to be 48 years old. We're going to be 50 years old. Isn't that scary to think about? You and I are going to be half a century old before we might see this team win again.
So Pat, and that's where it comes to the development piece. And you look at a guy that we're going to talk about very soon here in Michael Kopech, and what now is happening with him. And, it's March 2024. We don't know what's going on with Michael Kopech. And that's sure, that's a lot on him personally, as a human being, as a player. There's things that he needs just to answer to, but there's also an organizational question, sure, you could say, wow, well, at least, maybe he figures it out. In the end, it's just good to finally have an idea of what is best for Michael Kopech. That's not a sustainable plan of 6 years, 6+ years. I know he didn't play in 2020, and obviously there were a bunch of injuries, but you can't say that about this new crop of players, these young kids, of like, well, maybe in 5 or 6 years, we'll know exactly where to have them or what role they're going to have. No, that can't be the time frame. That's not a realistic time frame here, so this is what we have to deal with as Sox fans. And we know the product on the field in 2024 is going to be tough to stomach. So, I think there's this feeling where I probably will get wrapped up into it eventually, is there are no real tangible expectations. So you can kind of just live in that, like, that bliss, that excitement of what could be, we don't have to come up with results just quite yet. And that's what it was like in 2017 and 2018. They were rough in 2018, 100-loss season. but you didn't really mind it too much because you were like, well, this is nothing. Like, this is just, it's supposed to be this way. Just wait a couple more years.
Yeah.
Watch out, American League. Watch out. Wait till you see what you're going to do when the White Sox run wild all over you, So I get it. Like, you live in this like kind of hypothetical, like fantasy world right now if you're just dreaming of what the rotation might look like. And we've got all this money to spend, all things that felt very familiar from the most recent rebuild. You just hope like, well, things are different. Getz is in charge now. You got Barfield here, the bad men, Hahn and, Williams are gone. Look, at the end of the day, I'm glad that Cease was traded. I from everything that I've read and from the people that I've talked to that are really tuned in on prospects, I like what we've got in return. And I think you could see these guys sooner rather than later.
I would like to, since we're on the topic of pitching and you had, what we're going to be expecting here soon. At what point is Katz, how long is his leash in terms of pitching coach? And I hate to always just go back and blame pitching coaches, but I wrote down some starters that were here. Let's start with Lance Lynn. He seemingly got worse. Now, I know a little bit was the issues he had with the health, with the knee at some point and coming back, but he seemingly got worse and got better once he left the White Sox organization. Kopech has definitely got worse. It almost seems like this organization went out of their way to ruin this guy. Lucas Giolito was terrible, really good, and then average. So a little bit erratic there. Cease, has obviously, we highlighted the ups and some of the downs. Carlos Rodon, when he was here, mostly injured. I don't know if you can blame everything on him, but had the marvelous season that he had before he left the White Sox. But I don't know. To me, I was expecting a little bit more out of an Ethan Katz. I don't know why. I don't know why I would have thought that this guy was going to be a savior, the next arm whisperer. That Don Cooper used to be, but I don't know. You tell me, Nick. I mean, this year you can probably take all the coaches this year and just throw it out. You're not going to be able to blame them for too much because the talent really isn't there. But at some point you really have to start holding him accountable. He's been able to hold on to his position through some change.
He has, he wasn't obviously a Chris Getz hire unless Chris Getz in the organization, really rallied for Ethan Katz like he did with Pedro Grifol. The whole Katz lab and Katz will fix them. And now you've got Bannister and there's a Bannister laboratory. And with a guy like Kopech, I have to say, okay, well, and maybe both things, can be separate. Was this Kopech's fault? Did he fail? Did the White Sox fail Kopech? Did the Katz lab fail Kopech? Was it a little bit of everything? And maybe that is the situation. I'm with you. I absolutely am with you on that. I start questioning because what? Maybe Chris Getz is like, well, we've got a fresh slate here. We've got brand new arms. We got new guys. Maybe I want to bring in my pitching coach, a guy that I've known through the years, that I really respect. And I like their style, how they go about their business. And this is a great time to do it. I mean, is it after this season, if just things aren't going in the right direction, or the conversations that Getz and Katz are having with Grifol and they're not on the same page, or if Getz just throws his hands up and be like, this isn't for me. I don't know.
You know what I've thought about is not for me. Like I said, I honestly, I think it's going to be a year where the coaches aren't going to be really held accountable for anything. They're going to be back in 2025 and then they'll be assessed when there's a team of talent to either develop or move into the point where they're.
But this is a critical year, I think, though, for the development of some of these young guys, to see any steps that they can make.
But listen, Nick, I don't mean to cut you off, but you have a manager that said stats don't matter. It's we're going to put right. So we're going to put the best guy out there to help us to win. So if stats don't matter, then they don't matter, or there's no metrics to measure for your coaches either.
I think he was specifically talking about spring training, but I love that you brought that quote back up again, because it is a mind number, and it's one of my all-time favorites by Pedro Grifol this past off season. I think you absolutely have to hold Katz accountable for some of these young arms and in any type of development that has happened. If you don't like what you saw in the next like 4, 5, 6 months out of certain pitchers that you think have a future in the Chicago White Sox organization, then you have to kind of say to Katz, like, WTF, man, what happened with these guys? How come Nastrini, for example, didn't advance the way we wanted him to, or Soroka, or whatever. And I hope I hope they do go in a positive direction. But if they don't, I feel like just because it's kind of a throwaway year, if you feel like these arms are going to be your future, then Katz should be, and Bannister should be, held accountable.
Yeah, and eventually, maybe it'll take different ownership at some point, but eventually you'd like your manager to be hiring their pitching coaches at some point, and not the pitching coach just to be appointed to the manager. I don't know if that solves anything, but it was just something that started to eat at me this week for whatever weird
that makes
reason,
sense.
because I'm a sick person. I think, everybody wants to talk about how horrible Kopech is, and he's going to the bullpen, and I know we're going to get to that here in a moment, but boy, I just would like to think, with that talent, and maybe it's not anything that can be rectified. Maybe you don't blame Katz for it, but does he get any of the blame for the non-development of a Michael Kopech? And that's where I guess the genesis of my thought came from.
No, well, if you compartmentalize it and you say, well, if your offense is god awful, well, shouldn't your hitting coach be, on the chopping block? If your team is god awful, and this obviously happens all the time in the NFL, your head coach is gone. And it happens in baseball, but I feel like baseball sometimes is pretty forgiving. I think because of the type of rebuild situations that go on, is like, we're gonna keep a guy around a little bit, give him a longer leash. But I feel like with pitching, if you don't see the development, if you don't see guys going in the right direction, I think you just have to say, we're just off on philosophy.
Yeah.
And I agree. I would think the manager would want to be able to hire their guy. And maybe Reinsdorf and company said to Grifol, Katz is untouchable. This is a person that we respect, we want in this organization. Much like, I think, Daryl Boston, you can't move this guy just quite yet.
It'll take about 25 years. That's all.
So I'm with you on that. Now, the Kopech thing, man, look, gosh, I've had so many conversations with people over the last, several days, whether it was in Arizona or beyond. What a mysterious case. This guy has gone through a lot personally. He's gone, not only just like with mental stuff and, personal life stuff. He's had just a ton of injuries since he came into the White Sox organization. A guy I thought absolutely was going to be a 1 or 2, an anchor to this rotation for many, many years, a stud. I wasn't hung up on hardware if he was going to win multiple Cy Youngs or whatever, but I just felt like he was going to be a reliable ace for us for this rotation for years to come. And we still don't know what's going on with this guy. Again, he sat out of 2020, that shortened season. 2021, you got to look at when he logged 55 innings as a reliever. And I think that's where a lot of people point to that and say, look at that. Look what he did in 2021. He should have stayed a reliever. He had 21 walks, 80 strikeouts in his 55 innings. He was just a starter in 2022, and very small sample size, very small out of the bullpen in 2023. He was mainly a starter. It sounded like they were going into the offseason with, there's a great Pedro quote of, we want him to be a starter. He's got the material, he's got the stuff for a closer, but we're gonna work on him as a starter. And It's like, okay, that's clear as mud. But it seemed like going into Camelback Ranch in Arizona, and as the weeks rolled, he was going to be a starter. He was going to be in the rotation. And then you got some messages of, well, it hasn't been determined yet. And, man, just out of the gate to start the game, the guy can't throw strikes.
Yeah.
And I saw it on Monday when he was facing the Rockies. He started the game. He was all over the place. Absolutely could not keep it in the zone. He's got electric stuff. There's no question about that. And when he's right, he's so dangerous. And I think maybe this is what, fans are hanging on to, is like in a small sample coming out of the bullpen, watch out, man. He could be contained for a short amount of time, and he's going to be a weapon. That's not why we brought him into the organization. Yeah. Okay. That's you don't trade Chris Sale for some relief guy that you're going to get maybe an inning out of every now and then. Maybe he could be long relief, but you got to throw strikes. I don't care if you're a starter, if you're coming out of the bullpen, or a closer. They were talking about this with Kopech the last few days, a closer. You cannot go in, start walking guys, have no control with your fastball, lose it mentally as a bullpen or closer. So I get it. He can ramp up to 100 miles an hour, high 90s out of the bullpen, but it's a real mess here, and I teased, when we were talking about this episode coming up on Sunday night, I said he might need to take an acid trip, just an LSD trip in the desert. You hear about these experiments that were done in the 50s and 60s when LSD was legal. It was illegal in 1970. Up until then, people were experimenting with hallucinogens. You would just wander off into the desert, some kind of Jim Morrison stuff, go find yourself, go on a spirit journey, on an acid trip, and you might come out right. It sounds goofy, but what else is there to do? Take a risk. I mean, all team, this is team. There's an oversight to this. So this is all, it's monitored by somebody, maybe Grady Sizemore. I don't really know what his role is right now, but maybe he oversees this acid trip in the desert, and Kopech comes out the other end. The doors of perception are opened. He's enlightened, and he doesn't think so much. I don't know, Pat.
I really wish you would have gotten a credential and got in the post game and framed up your question to Pedro. Pedro, it seems that nothing has worked, and you've tried it all. Have you considered an acid trip journey for Kopech in the desert while we happen to be in the desert? Your answer, sir. Thank you. Nick from Chicago, by the way.
Nick from Good Guys Talk
Back.
Back.
Nick, Good Guys Talk Back. Have you thought about sending your players out on acid journeys?
Not players,
you've
plural.
Considered?
Not players, plural. Just a certain player, and it's all supervised. Okay, it's all supervised. It's all supervised and it's controlled. Mm-hmm. I mean, it works for some people. Aaron Rodgers, he's got one hell of a success story on some sort of either mushrooms or some sort of hallucinogen. I mean, there's literature out on this. There are books written on this kind of stuff. I just feel like if doctors approve of it, and I think there's a mental health coach now with the White Sox, and if this is all approved, I think it could be something that could unlock whatever.
This is where Nick Murawski is now with Michael Kopech. Nothing else seems to work. Maybe if he starts eating some mushrooms, that will do it. I'm upset by this. Actually, this bothers me a lot that they're going to put him in the bullpen. And I get, while he can't find the plate and we can't have him start out a game like this, and his success, after the COVID year, when he was coming in and he was doing a spot start here or there, or he was doing some long relief, maybe 2 or 3 innings, he really had found himself there, Nick, and there was some success in that role. So again, there's some history of him being in the bullpen and having success. So I could see why he'd want to do it. But I just don't think that we've experienced the return on our investment there in that trade. And I would like to see it out in a year when you have 0 starting pitching anyway. It really can't hurt you. But again, you have coaches and a manager that aren't looking at it probably as just a throwaway. Right? Then in their heart of hearts, maybe they would say it's a throwaway year, but they still are trying to manage to win games. So I guess I understand it a little bit, but I would have liked to seen, all right, damn it, this is the year that we're going to figure out if we have something here in Michael Kopech as a starter. And if we go, his whatever starts he gets, 20 to 25 starts, whatever it ends up being, at the end of the year, we need to have an answer on what he is as far as a starter. And come hell or high water, he's going to stay in that role because, quite frankly, we need arms in the starting staff. So I just don't see the benefit of continuing to hurt an area of your team that is limping right now to put somebody in the bullpen to have him come out and do a couple innings here, a couple innings there, because because you're for whatever reason you don't want him on the mound to start a game. I'm kind of beside myself, a little angry about it because maybe it's me as the fan just wanting more and wanting it to work so badly that it doesn't matter. I don't care what the result is. I don't care if he walks the world in the first 2 innings. I want it to work so bad. I just want, it just has to happen. But
the process of him trying to be a starter outweighs the results for you. And I get that. I think I'm with you there too, is I wanted this so much as a fan because of the return and the direction. And I was like, finally, we might see it this year. And if results don't matter, if stats don't matter, according to Pedro Grifol, well, then who cares what he's walked in spring training? If you really believe in this guy as a starter, which you did coming into spring training, then stick with him.
Yeah.
Let him figure it out. Have some trust in this guy. He wants it. He came in talking it up. Best health of my life, of course.
My favorite
lost
season.
some weight, more flexible. I'm ready. Maybe he just had some jitters. It just seems like it's very reactionary. It's like snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap. I mean, that messes with you. So if he's successful out of the pen, which again, I hope he is, man, I hope he does come out throwing strikes. That could answer, a problem for us. Are you going to say, oh, well, look he's throwing strikes. We need that big arm as a starter. We're going to move him back into the rotation. I mean, are you going to keep playing this game, or is this the end result is a reliever, Michael Kopech?
My thought is, Nick, and I think I mentioned it maybe last week or the week before. You're going to need probably 9 starters throughout a season anyway, with guys going down for injury, what have you. He's going to probably start a game here or there this year. Is that going to be something that's going to throw him off? You're probably going to tell him at the beginning of the year.
He could be an opener. He could be an opener for a couple innings. Start as a start.
At this point, I think the damage is done. I don't think there's any ability to save whatever we thought we had with Michael Kopech here. Maybe he needs a clean start for himself, and this organization needs a clean break from a Michael Kopech, because whatever we've done, every step of the way, from the injury to start his career as a Chicago White Sox, to the COVID year where he didn't want to pitch and he sat out, which, that's his right to have done that, and that's fine, to the inconsistencies along the way. And all the you mentioned it, all the personal stuff that he's also dealt with. I just don't know if this is the right situation for him to be in. He needs to be in a really solid organization with a fantastic foundation of developing guys and to have a successful career, because this just ain't it here. And for his sake, boy, I would hope that he finds himself a new home and has some success somewhere else.
To that point, and to what Brian had mentioned, maybe he just kicks ass out of the bullpen, and come trade time, it's like, whatever we can get for him, we want to set him up for success. And I'm still holding on to that acid trip, but we'll see. we'll see. Now Pedro,
Nick, you don't condone
I
drugs
just
for
want
our younger fans,
just want
right? We're
it's
not.
all supervised. This
Oh,
stuff
you
was
can do
legal
all you want
50
to do.
years
Do
ago,
heroin as long
60
as
years
somebody's
ago.
watching.
No, it's not. It's all supervised.
Okay.
There are experiments. This is I'm as long as doctors approve on everything.
Uh-huh.
That's what I'm saying here. I would not recommend this at all. On your own without some sort of research or doctor's guidance. But with a guy like Michael Kopech in this situation, and he seems to be open to kind of like maybe different types of avenues, I could possibly see it.
Is this where we have the message? Nick's opinions are his own opinions, not necessarily of good guys talk back.
Yeah, there's just my random thoughts.
Got it.
As I've read on this over the years. So anyway, Pedro Grifol said that he does know, Pat. He does know who the White Sox opening day starter is, but he's not revealing it yet. He's going to keep
never
that.
tell.
He's keeping that a little secret for himself,
Uh-huh.
which is absolutely wonderful. Maybe it is Michael Kopech. Maybe it's like surprise. It's Michael Kopech.
Fooled you all, didn't I?
Yeah. So what we got going on here is potentially Fetty, Soroka, Crochet, Flexen, and Nastrini, who went 4 scoreless against the Oakland A's here on March 17th on Sunday, who's looked really good. Now, Nastrini coming from LA last trade deadline for Joe Kelly. Flexen was with Seattle, Colorado last season. Soroka, Atlanta, and Fetty in the KBO. Your other potentials, maybe Tukey, maybe Brad Keller, the whisperer himself, Bob Nightingale, trying to push the idea of Mike Clevenger. He hasn't found a home, but I think those might be your guys: Fetty, Soroka, Crochet, Flexen, and Nastrini. A real cast of characters, a real motley crew. Not a lot of experience there at all, but Nastrini is the guy out of all of those, and Crochet, because I did see Crochet pitch. He's had a great spring. Man, talk about a guy that looks confident. I've got a plan, and maybe maybe he is a Katz success story, Pat. Maybe you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. And Katz is like, you know what? And I can't figure out Kopech, but I was able to help Crochet. So I think those probably are your guys, and Nastrini I'm kind of excited about.
I would be all kinds of excited if it was Crochet. That would be that would get my my juices flowing a little bit. Just because we were pumped to see him come in. It's kind of like all of a sudden here's this kid throwing 107 miles an hour and blowing people away out of the bullpen as a young kid right out of college, seemingly. So it would be a great story. I'd love for him to come back from injury and be the opening day starting pitcher. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, I think he will be on an innings limit. He has to be. He's going to be monitored closely, which goes to your point of there's going to be a bunch of different arms that they're going to have to throw. And Sydney had a great comment in terms of Kopech starting that opener against the San Francisco Giants. Man, that thing went. Yeah, we were all there physically, mentally. We left probably after the second inning or something. It looked like he was on a current acid trip, the way he was throwing and the way the Giants were bashing it out of the ballpark. He did not look like he was there at all. So,
no.
I would be really excited if Crochet got in there, something that he has fought for, advocated for. And it sounded silly at the time at the beginning of spring training. Like, are you kidding me? This guy does not have a lot of innings on his arm. And we're going to have him in the rotation, and here we are. Little did we know Cease was eventually going to be traded, which kind of felt like it was going to happen, and that Kopech was going to get kicked to the bullpen. And now this is what we've got going on here. This was Chris Getz back in 2016. He was the director of player development, as I talked about towards the beginning of the episode, and things didn't go well during that rebuild, at least in my perspective as a fan, 2 wins, 1 division title, 2 playoff wins, I should say, and a division title.
Oh, that's a rough time.
So now Getz has his hands in this latest rebuild as the GM and senior vice president. But this was Getz in 2016. Our organization is excited with the direction that we've taken. It's a direction that is different than what we've done here in a while. So I look forward to getting to know these players. Hopefully these players get comfortable quickly, and we get them to the big leagues and have them reach the ceiling, which we've identified. So, based on what I talked about at the beginning with Chris Getz, this was his most recent quote. We felt it was the right time to make this trade. Up until Wednesday, we didn't feel like we had a deal on the table that met the mark. It finally came together to inject this type of talent into the organization. I woke up excited today. So, I say that because it kind of has the same feel. But, again, he's taking a look from 30,000 feet now. This is different. How does he delegate? How does he have the people in place? It didn't work out for him as a director of player development, but maybe whatever role he oversees there, it goes different. It's kind of an interesting role for him. He was in the trenches in 2016, 2017, and now he's got a different viewpoint here in 2024 as we do this all over again in another rebuild. So I find that to be kind of interesting, not quite fascinating, but just to see how he handles it. Does he take into account some mistakes that were made, and maybe this time around, he's going to take things a little different. He's got a different approach. Few I think have those types of experiences, but with the White Sox, they'll keep you around no matter what. So you do have those moments where you can kind of come full circle and get another go at it.
Yeah, I think he's done the easy thing, Nick. He's done the easy thing in terms of trading your best asset, right? Outside of Luis Robert Jr. to get the prospects. It's what I want to see is the shrewd moves that can be made once this team is ready to win, and filling in the gaps with a free agent here or there. So for me, it's going to be hard to really judge a Chris Getz for the next several years, really, because he is kind of overseeing this process, and he's not going to be in the trenches, as it were, as these people are developing. He's got people to do that now. I don't know what kind of what he'll take in from that job into this job that he'll think, okay, I did this then, and now I can do this here, because they're completely different roles, right? So I don't really know, other than being able to connect with. I don't even know who he has his old gig right now, to be honest with you. So is there a connection there that he can kind of go to that person and say, this is what I did to bring us so much success last time? Here's what I did. Here's the playbook that I had. I have it all here on a thumb drive. Just put that in your old computer and just do what I did. Yeah, I don't know. But like I said, there's been a lot of arrows thrown at Chris Getz, and somewhat not his fault. It's not his fault that no one else was interviewed for his position. It's not his fault that he was given the role. So it's really more of our angst is towards the organization and the process over what Chris gets. So I'll leave my criticism and maybe grading for Chris Getz until the rubber meets the road, when it's time to actually make some shrewd moves. You're going to need to probably do something, and I mentioned this maybe a couple episodes back. You're going to need to do something at some point when this team needs to move from one point to the next, where you go, I might have to move off of maybe this fan favorite to get the piece that I really need to complete this team. We're too redundant in this area. We're not athletic enough, or whatever. And I know that's been an emphasis of this team, to be more athletic, the fast, all that stuff that has been thrown about this spring training. But
he's not, Pat. He's not stocking up on hybrid first baseman, DH, maybe right fielders. So,
and he hasn't currently drafted his own son, has he? Because that was a problem for our previous VP of baseball operations, is the wasting a pick on your own kid.
Oh,
yeah. So So I'll wait and see on Chris Getz. Like I said, when the time comes to make some shrewd moves that will really move this organization to a point of being in contention, then and I also will not, Nick, and I don't think anybody should hold anything against him in terms of what he can get in free agency, because that is
Sure.
all
Yeah.
tied to the amount of money he's able to spend. And if he's not given the amount of money, we can't really blame him for not going out and getting things.
But then how does he use the money that he's given?
Well,
I
that's
will say that,
right.
like how do you use that?
And that's got to be like, okay, I can't get this one big, let's call it a superstar, but I've got to get some really solid ball players that are going to, I'm looking for X, and this person fills that, whatever
Will he
that role
spend
is.
$1 billion on the bullpen? That's what we're all wondering with this this
and
money.
and forget about right field. Don't
Just whoops,
the position
man,
is,
I forgot.
guys. I'm just gonna, maybe that'll be our role. We just get to the ballpark early one day, and we knock on a door and go, "Hey guys, Pat and Nick, good guys, talk back. Just want to let you know, one, we're big fans of acid trips. Two, don't forget about filling out a right field at some point. Thank you, and have a
You're
great
those
day."
guys that talked about acid trips. I've been calling that for years. This whole 50-50 split the pot thing. They jack up the guaranteed money for big games and stuff. Have a raffle for a right fielder. The attendance, and you got to be present, to win, all that kind of stuff. Because attendance is going to be horrible this year. I think in 2018 they lost 100 games, and it was the lowest draw in the last 20 something years. They drew 1.6 million, 1,608,000, something like that. They're going to be under. Now they drew less than that in 2021, but I think there were still restrictions going on because of COVID with capacity and stuff like that. But I think they're going to go under 1.6. They might be 1.59 if it even matters, but I just think it's going to be a very low attended season. But I had fun in Arizona, Pat. I mean, beautiful weather. It's a wonderful facility. If you've ever had the opportunity to get out there, Camelback Ranch, they share it with the juggernaut Dodgers. And from the practice fields, just the way it's designed. And when we were there, just, again, not very, with sparse crowds. We were able to roam wherever we wanted to go. Saw them fall to the Rockies. Then they played very well against the Angels, but I saw Pilar out in right field when I was there, and I was really impressed with the guy. I mean, he made some outstanding plays. He made a catch that was Aaron Rowan-esque. I mean, he just caught the ball and immediately slammed into the wall, held on to the ball, went about his business, stayed in the game. It feels like it's Fletcher's job, even though Fletcher's had a horrible spring. But again, we know numbers don't matter, according to Grafol. Pilar hasn't had a great offensive spring, and maybe Pilar is a guy that they bring along as an extra outfielder. I really liked what I saw from him in right. Again, I talked about Kopech. Boy, he had a rough outing on Monday, which again resulted into the demotion to the bullpen. But I like hanging out in right field by their bullpen before the game. You get really nice access to what they're trying to work on. It was kind of cool to see a pitching machine that was, just targeted into the ground, and catchers, Lee and Chucky Robinson were just working on blocking. Like they were just feeding balls into a pitching machine, purposely skipping into the dirt. And these guys were just working on blocking techniques. I thought that was kind of cool. And I did get to see kind of their stretching routine. I know I make joke of it, but that's really important. I mean, boy, our pitching coach in high school and in college, it was nonstop stretching and different activities. Kopech did a whole wide array of stretches. I mean, he didn't use the big rubber band. I was a little disappointed, but he was doing all kinds of twists and these exaggerated, motions. Your mechanics are kind of exaggerated when you're stretching things out before the game. So I was a little disappointed at the results. I'm like, you put the work in. I watched you. I had video. You stretched. You checked. I mean, if I was grading your stretching process, you were all good, man. So
Well,
I
that's
don't
good.
know.
I'm
Yeah,
glad you got to get out there and enjoy spring training and not have to, it doesn't count for anything, so you can enjoy it and just be around the game. You can appreciate the game, Nick, is what you can do.
that's what has to
Uh,
be the slogan. Yeah,
so appreciate
yeah,
the game. And
yeah.
so that's fantastic. There's nothing really better than, and I was just talking to my 7-year-old about this. I said, Gav, Dad will take you out to spring training one year. That it'll be a fun trip, and I look forward to that someday. It's a great opportunity to get out, enjoy some nice weather, taking a few games, and it's kind of like something that if you're a baseball fan, you really should do at least once or twice, if not make it a yearly pilgrimage out to see your team.
Yeah, we've gone now back to back years. This is my fourth time altogether. It's just I enjoy it, man. Getting out of this kind of this weird limbo weather that we're having in the Chicagoland area. Get out there. We had gorgeous, 70s. I think it might have touched 80 one of the days. So it was a nice week. Saw Moncada. He played, did not bunt. I did not get to see a Yohan
Oh,
Moncada bunt, which I was really disappointed. He roped a single down the left field line. Luis Robert Jr. swung the bat. He swung the bat well. Jimenez missed 3 straight games, but then came back on Sunday here on St. Patrick's Day, went 0 for 3. It sounded like it was just some rest. I did not, Howard, I didn't see George Walco in Arizona. I did not. I saw Danny Mendick, my man, play, but not much to talk about. With he
not much to
serviced
talk
himself.
about. No mustache. Was it there? Was it visible?
Yeah. No, I think he might still be in training with that.
Okay.
Might reveal it if he makes the team. But he
it.
played some second base. Again, it's very laid back. It's a nice opportunity to just get a glimpse on some and going a little bit later. Like if you're starting to see those opening day, those game ready lineups. If it's not a split, which is kind of nice. So
yeah. Well, that's great. I'm glad you had a good time, and thanks for your being boots on the ground and reporting back to us and tweeting all the large rubber bands that you did see and all the stretches that you saw. I mean, I'm sure you were in hog heaven.
Yeah, while I was there, they had some offensive. They just went crazy. 29 runs in 2 days. Pedro put out this big statement early last week before this. This huge offensive spark. From my view, we have to start putting the pedal to the metal when it comes to knowing how to win baseball games and how to put baseball games away. We got to address this thing. It's not random anymore. It happened more than a couple of days already. So it almost seems like he's starting to get a little concerned, or was, about stats, and maybe it was just the way they were playing, because it was pretty bad. I mean, the last time we talked, the record was horrible. The run diff. I mean, they just weren't playing very good baseball.
But didn't they improve the run differential by 10? I mean, last time we talked, it was minus 33. So it's trending in the right direction, Nick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, they put up 29 runs in 2 days. They won that rain shortened game against the Cubs, thankfully. So there was a lot of offense. Leisure keeps playing well. He's working himself into the conversation here, if he hasn't already. So Vaughn has come around, getting some offense going. The Moose was loose this past week. Again, his numbers aren't glaring, but he's getting the playing time. So look, I think by the time we talk next time, and we're going to have to discuss when that's going to be and everything, because I know you're going to be on vacation next Sunday, so I might have to come up with a plan, but we might have a better idea on maybe the rotation, maybe some of these question marks in terms of their roster, and who is that fourth infielder? Braden Shoemake, he's on the shelf for about a month, 2 to 4 weeks with an ankle issue. It was looking like he was going to make the team. So guys that might have thought they were out of the picture might be in. I think there's going to just be a lot of bodies moving back and forth this year.
That's another great marketing slogan. Bodies moving back and forth. Get your Sox tickets today. 312-332 flush it. I don't know, something like that.
All right, you ready for a Pedro Grifol quote of the week?
Nick, I've been ready for it since we hit record.
This one's not bad. This one, Pedro's making some sense here. I like where he's going
he's
with
on an
this.
acid trip. Maybe he needed an acid trip to make sense.
Michael, what I did was I went on an LSD trip out in just kind of in between Phoenix and Peoria where there's absolutely nothing. And I wandered around all under supervision and it went well for me. This is what I came up with. And I suggest you maybe do the same. Let's talk about it. So this is what he had to say on Leisure, actually, because potentially maybe as a closer here. And again, Leisure has never pitched though in the majors. This is what Grifol said. I don't really tackle closing. I tackle leverage. If it happens that other guys tackle leverage prior to him, and he's the man standing in the ninth, so be it. I'm tackling leverage. If it so happens that's tackling leverage in the eighth or someone else is standing in the ninth, so be it. But I'm not going to bypass a leverage situation with anyone to worry about in the ninth. We have to get past the eighth to pitch the ninth. The ninth is really important. They break your heart, but so is the eighth. I agree with it. I mean, he's making sense there. You tend to worry about the ninth and you might be saving some of your bullets, so to speak, for the ninth, but there are bigger situations happening in the seventh or eighth, and that's where the game is at. So I like where he's going with that, Pedro Grifol, with that quote of the week.
I can totally get behind it because the situation might happen in other innings outside of the ninth, but that's really what you say when you don't have a closer, Nick. I mean, honestly, that's what you say. You're not saying that if Liam Hendriks is on this team, right? Yeah. You're not using however many words that just was to explain where you're tackling the leverage at. When you have a guy like Liam Hendriks, that's your ninth. That's your closer, and that's your stopper right there. So,
but that's where we're at. There isn't a closer, and they might not define one. There might just be guys that it's by committee, and that's how it goes. Katz talked about Kopech as a closer. It could be him. It might not be him. We don't know. But getting that aggressive approach to him might be a good thing for him. That almost seems like I'm going to force you to throw strikes. I'm going to force you. I'm going to put you in a situation where you have to really focus if they're going to put him as closer. That would be a wild experiment. But I've talked about some wilder ones in this episode, so I don't know.
That's true. And Howard, you automatically get the worst joke of the year right there with Leisure suits me just fine. Come on, Howard. I mean, that's beyond that joke situation right there.
It's great. I absolutely love it. Really appreciate everybody jumping in here on St. Patrick's Day night, jumping in the comments. Some great chatter going on as we are less than 2 weeks away from opening day. Pat, absolutely a pleasure talking White Sox with you again, sir.
Nick, buddy, it's good to see you again. I'm glad you're back. And I don't know, maybe we'll just go off and have an LSD trip after this show.
You just have to think about it. Do your research. Again, consult your physician, your team doctor, make sure things are supervised. But it's just keep an open mind about it. It's worked. It has worked.
Okay,
folks, stay tuned. Not sure what next week is going to hold. There will be an episode. We'll figure that out. But best way, subscribe to the Good Guys Talk Back YouTube channel. Find the audio absolutely everywhere. We are on Twitter X at Good Guys TB. We've got a Facebook fan page. Once again, I know there is so much White Sox content out there, and it means a lot that you spend your time or a portion of your time with us as we chop up White Sox baseball in the most fan-centric way we know how. For Pat Hester, I am Nick Murawski. Until next time, go Sox.